I told my daughter something last year that I wish I could take back. Not because it wasn't true, but because the way she looked at me changed. It was something small. I mentioned I'd felt a little dizzy one morning getting out of bed. That's all. Just a passing comment. She asked how I was feeling, and I answered honestly. I didn't think anything of it, but within 3 days she was calling more often, checking in, asking if I'd thought about maybe not driving so much at night. Then she suggested I come stay with her for a few weeks, just to rest, just to be safe. And then came the line I'll never forget. She said, "Mom, maybe it's time we start thinking about some help around the house." Help! That word sat in my chest like a stone. I gave her one moment of weakness, and she turned it into a reason to manage me. I don't blame her. I know she loves me. But that's when I realized something that broke my heart a little. Being honest with the people you raise can start to feel like handing them the keys to your life. And I wasn't ready to do that. I'm 91 years old. I've buried a husband I loved for 52 years. I've raised 4 children. I worked 30 years as a nurse. I've lived alone now for 12 years, and I'm still here. Still standing, still making my own choices. I'm telling you this because what I'm about to share isn't coming from fear or bitterness. It's coming from something deeper, pattern recognition. I've watched my friends lose their independence, not to illness, not to old age, but to well-meaning children who thought they knew better. I've seen siblings stop speaking because of arguments over money that started before their mother was even gone. I've lived long enough to see the shift from being the one everyone came to for advice to being the one everyone worries about. And here's what I've learned. Family love is real, but so is family interest. And sometimes those two things get tangled up in ways that hurt everyone. So when I tell you there are things you should never share with your family after a certain age, I'm not teaching you to lie. I'm teaching you to survive with your dignity intact. We're told from the time we're young that family is everything, that honesty is love, that if you hide things, it means you don't trust the people closest to you. And for most of your life, that's true. You share your struggles and they help. You ask for advice and they give it. It works. But somewhere after 70, something shifts. You stop being the provider and become the concern. Your health stops being private and starts being their right to know. Your money stops being yours and starts being the inheritance they're protecting. Your choices stop being respected and start being reviewed like you're taking a test. I'm not saying this happens in every family, but it happens enough. And most of us don't see it coming until we've already said too much. You mention you're tired, and suddenly someone's researching assisted living. You say you're thinking of helping a grandchild with tuition, and there's an emergency family meeting about protecting you from yourself. The problem isn't that they care. It's that care has become another word for control, and the tool they use to take that control, the information you gave them. When you were 40 and told your daughter you were exhausted, she brought you soup. When you're 75 and say the same thing, she starts talking about whether you should still be living alone. It's not the same anymore. The words are the same, but the meaning has changed. And the hardest part is realizing that most of us didn't notice the shift until it was already too late. So I'm going to tell you about 7 things I learned to keep to myself, not out of spite, not out of fear, out of survival. The first thing I stopped sharing was money, how much I have, how much I'm spending, what's in my accounts. I learned this one the hard way, but not from my own mistake, from watching what happened to a friend of mine. She mentioned one afternoon, just in passing, that she had about $40,000 in savings. She wasn't bragging. She was just talking. Relieved, even. She'd saved carefully her whole life, and she was proud of it. But within 2 months, her son asked her for a loan to help with his business. Then her daughter got upset that she was living so frugally when she had all that money just sitting there. A nephew she barely spoke to suddenly had opinions about whether she should be helping pay for her great-grandkids' college. What was supposed to be her security became everyone else's opportunity. And here's the thing. The moment your family knows what you have, it stops being yours in their minds. It becomes the family money. It becomes our inheritance. It becomes something you're either hoarding or wasting, depending on what you do with it. I don't lie when my kids ask how I'm doing financially. I just learn to be vague. I say, I'm comfortable. I say, I'm managing just fine. I say, I've got what I need. And that's true. But I don't tell them the numbers. Because once they know, the questions start. Why are you still driving that old car if you have money saved? Why aren't you helping more? Why are you being so cheap with yourself? Your savings aren't just money. They're the last piece of independence you have. Guard it like your life depends on it, because it does. The second secret I keep, my health. Not the big things. If I had cancer, I'd tell them. But the small things. The aches, the pains, the occasional dizziness or the headache that won't quite go away. I stopped mentioning those. I learned that lesson with my son. I told him once that I'd been having headaches. Just headaches. Nothing I was worried about. But he latched on. Suddenly, he wanted me to see a specialist. Then he started asking if I was sure I should still be driving. A month later, he sent me a link to a memory care community. Just to look at, he said, just in case. My world started shrinking, and it wasn't because of the headaches. It was because I'd mentioned them. After 70, every symptom you share gets treated like the beginning of the end. A cough isn't just a cough. It's pneumonia waiting to happen. Fatigue isn't normal. It's a sign you're declining. You slip on the stairs once, and suddenly the conversation is about whether you can still live alone. I'm not saying you should hide a stroke or a serious diagnosis. I'm saying don't hand them every little ache and pain like it's evidence against you. When I was younger, I could complain all I wanted. Now, complaints get written down, cataloged, remembered, used later to build a case. So I keep 2 lists now, one for my doctor, one for myself. The things I need medical advice on, I handle with professionals. The things that are just part of being 91 years old, I keep private. Because I learned that my family's love comes with panic. And panic makes decisions I'm not ready for. I want to age in my own home on my own terms, so I stopped giving them reasons to take that away from me. The third thing I don't share anymore, my loneliness. And listen, I get lonely. Of course I do. I've been widowed for over a decade. I live by myself. Some days the silence in this house feels so heavy I could cry. But I stopped saying that out loud. Because when I did, the response was never comfort. It was solutions. My daughter would say, well, maybe you should move in with us. My son would say, you need to get out more, Mom. Join a group or something. And someone always said, maybe you shouldn't be living alone. The loneliness wasn't the problem. The isolation that came after their help was. I watched this happen to a friend. She admitted to her daughter that she felt blue on the anniversary of her husband's death. That's all, just blue. Her daughter panicked, started researching senior centers, grief counselors, support groups, signed her up for things she didn't ask for. All my friend wanted was for someone to sit with her in the sadness for a minute, not fix it, just hear it. But families don't do that anymore. They hear loneliness and think emergency. I can be lonely and still be whole. I can miss my husband and still be capable of living my life. But they don't see it that way. So now, when the loneliness comes, I write it in my journal. I talk to God about it. I call an old friend who understands that some feelings just need to be felt, not solved. I protect my sadness now, not because I'm ashamed of it, but because I won't let it become their excuse to manage me. Number 4, never ever tell them what's in your will. I went to a funeral a few years ago, a woman I'd known from church. Sweet lady, raised 3 kids on her own after her husband passed young. And the day of her funeral, her kids got into a screaming match in the church parking lot. You know why? Because she'd told each of them different things about what they'd be getting. One thought he was getting the house. One thought she was getting the savings. The other thought everything was being split equally. By the time she died, expectations had been set, favorites had been implied, and the will became a battlefield. I almost made the same mistake. I almost told my son he'd be getting the house. I was so close to saying it, but then I stopped, because I realized that the moment I did, everything would change. He'd start planning. He'd start thinking of this house as his. And every decision I made about it, every repair I chose not to do, or every change I wanted to make, he'd resent. Because in his mind, it would already be his house. I've seen what happens when families know too much too soon. Visits start feeling like auditions. Kindness starts feeling like strategy. You stop being their mother and start being a prize they're competing for. I worked my whole life for what I have. I'll decide what happens to it when I'm gone. But I won't let it poison the time I have left with them. Here's the truth I learned. The people who love you for you won't ask what they're getting. And the ones who do ask, that tells you everything you need to know. Number 5 is something a lot of people get wrong. Don't give them your passwords. Don't give them access to your bank accounts, your email, your phone, not even just in case. I know a woman who gave her daughter access to her checking account for emergencies. That was the deal. Emergencies only. Within a year, that daughter was monitoring every purchase, asking why she spent $30 at the salon, suggesting she was spending too much on groceries, commenting every time there was a charge she didn't recognize. What started as help turned into surveillance. And here's what nobody tells you. Once they have access, you're no longer in charge. You're accountable. There's a difference between having someone you trust who can step in if you ask, and someone who has the keys to everything and can act without asking you first. I have a system. I've written everything down. Passwords, account numbers, instructions. It's in a sealed envelope with my lawyer. If something happens to me, it'll be opened, but not before. That protects me, and honestly, it protects them too. It keeps temptation away. It keeps the power where it belongs. I know the fear. What if you fall? What if you have a stroke and no one can access anything? I get it, but I'd rather risk a little inconvenience than live under supervision. I spent 70 years building this life. I'm not handing the keys over just because I'm old. Number 6, I don't tell them when I mess up anymore. I forget things now. Names, dates, where I put my glasses. It's part of being 91. But I stopped mentioning it because every time I did, it got filed away as evidence. Evidence that I was slipping. Evidence that I couldn't be trusted. I told my granddaughter once that I'd gotten confused at the grocery store. I couldn't find the bread aisle. I'd been shopping there for 30 years and I just blanked. It happens. But she told her mother, and that night my daughter called. Mom, are you okay? Maybe we need to talk about some changes. Changes. All because I couldn't find the bread. We all have bad days, but after 70, your bad days become evidence. When I was younger, if I forgot something, people laughed it off. Now it gets documented, noted. Compared to last time, I can't share my frustrations anymore because they'll be used to measure my capacity. I can't admit when something is hard because hard means I've lost the right to decide for myself. So I started keeping a journal. I write down the days I feel off, the moments I forget, the times I'm scared. It's private. It's mine. Nobody's reading it and making decisions based on it. And that's how it needs to be. I wish I could tell them when I'm struggling. I wish I could say today was hard without it turning into an intervention. But I can't, because I've learned that scared makes them act. And I'm not ready to be acted upon. And number 7, the last one, never complain about one of your kids to another one. Never. I learned this the hardest way possible. Years ago, I was frustrated with my son. He wasn't calling, wasn't visiting. I felt hurt. So I vented to my daughter. I didn't think it was a big deal. I just needed to get it off my chest. But she remembered. And years later, during a family argument, she threw it back at him. She said, "Even Mom said you don't care," she told me. It broke something between them. And it broke something in me too, knowing my words had been saved like ammunition. What I said in a moment of frustration became a permanent wedge. Here's what I know now. Anything you say about one of them to another becomes a weapon. Maybe not today, but someday. Family dynamics are complicated. You love them all, but they don't always love each other the same way. And your words, even in private, can tip the scales in ways you never intended. So now, I keep my frustrations to myself. I pray through them, I write them down. If I'm really upset with one of my kids, I talk to them directly, or I let it go, but I don't vent sideways anymore. I know how isolating that sounds. Sometimes you just want to say, "He hurt my feelings," and have someone understand, but the cost is too high. Family politics don't end just because you're old. If anything, they get sharper. So I keep my peace by keeping my mouth shut. Here's what nobody tells you. After a certain age, honesty stops protecting you and starts exposing you. It's not because people are bad. It's because the roles have reversed. You're no longer the decision maker by default. You're the one whose decisions get reviewed. Your family loves you. I know that. But they also have their own fears. They're afraid of losing you, afraid of you getting hurt, afraid of what people will say if something happens and they weren't watching closely enough. And those fears, as real as they are, make them act in ways that feel like love, but look like control. So here's the lesson. You don't owe everyone access to everything. You don't have to prove you're still capable by being perfect. You can be aging, you can be slowing down, you can forget things and still deserve autonomy. I answer to God for my choices, not to my children. And they'll have to trust that I raised them well enough to trust me back. There's a difference between harmful secrets and protective privacy. Harmful secrets are hiding abuse, hiding danger, hiding something that affects other people's safety. That's wrong. But keeping your finances private, your health concerns between you and your doctor, your feelings in your own heart, that's not secrecy. That's survival. Keeping these 7 things to myself didn't make me distant from my family. It made me free. And that freedom let me love them better. Because I'm not afraid of them anymore. I'm not walking on eggshells, worried that one wrong word will start a chain reaction I can't stop. I can enjoy them now, because I'm not handing them pieces of myself they'll use to build a case. I'd love to know, how old are you and where are you watching this from? Drop your age and your city or state in the comments. I love seeing where everyone is. And here's the real question. Have you ever shared something with family that you wish you could take back? Or maybe you've learned, like I have, to keep certain things private. Maybe you disagree with me completely, and that's okay too. There's no right or wrong here. Just different experiences, different families, different choices. But I will say this, you're not alone. Whether you're feeling guilty for keeping secrets or relieved that someone finally said it out loud, you're not alone in this. Sometimes just saying it, even here in a comment section with strangers who understand, helps more than staying silent. So go ahead, share what's on your heart. I'll read them. Others will too. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize you've been carrying something you didn't have to carry alone. Take care of yourself. You've earned that right